أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف خلق الله محمد وآله الطاهرين. Today is the 2nd of Safar, which is the second morning month of the tragedy of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and in a couple of days we will be commemorating the Shahada of Imam Hassan al-Mujtaba alayhi salam. My condolences to you all in advance. When we look into the topic of contemporary Islamic theology, it's very important for us to have a look at the tools that we are going to use, the instruments that we will be using throughout our discussions. And like any other science, there are basic principles that need to be observed as far as the process of thought is concerned. It's very important that when you are familiarizing yourself with a certain industry, you familiarize yourself with the primary tools that you are going to be using throughout your process. If you're a carpenter, then you're going to become acquainted with the tools of sawing and hammering and gluing and whatnot. And if you're a jeweler, it's a good example here. If you're a jeweler, then you need to know what kind of tools you're going to be using, becoming acquainted with them. And that's why before we enter into anything that we are going to discuss as far as Islamic theology as a whole and contemporary Islamic theology in particular, we need to realize that there are these shared components that we have as human beings, and that would be the best tool, the most effective instrument that we are able to use, because ultimately the commonality that we have as human beings is not in our religion, nor in any of these three concepts that we're going to be studying today, but in the commonality that we all have is in our intellect, our reasoning, our rationality. But the problem with that is, what kind of reasoning or rationality or intellectual understanding do we believe in? And that means that, are there different takes on what reason and rationality means? One of the words that we very, very frequently hear is logical or logic, or doesn't seem logical, or it doesn't make sense, or it doesn't sound right. How do we understand these things? Or logically this, or logically that. How does that, work as far as our boundaries of what we share as human beings? And so that's why I think that it's very important for us to have a look at these three important concepts, because if you're going to be building your outlook on theology, on contemporary issues, then it needs to be built on something strong and firm. It's none of these examples of building a castle on sand, or having a very weak foundation and then starting with the construction of a skyscraper. All these things that kind of like allude to the necessity of us having a strong foundation that we work on. And that's why, although there might be some kind of, I don't know if I should use the word privilege, or if I should use the word merit, in being born in a religious family, in a moral family, in an Islamic family, in a Shia family, there might be some merit in that itself, but there's something that carries heavier importance and greater merit, and that is that you have yourself individually adopted a worldview, an ideology, and a correct understanding of epistemic value in knowledge. And the reason why I say this is because we can't interpret Islam through the eyes of Muslims. Because if that was the case, unfortunately, Islam would have a very, very bad record. There are many people who have come across this very famous saying of an Orientalist who said that I traveled to the Middle East and I saw Muslims, but I didn't see Islam. And I traveled to the West, back to the West, and I saw Islam, but I didn't see Muslims. Now, of course, I'm very sure that, you know, some of the sisters might have a lot to say about this, but the point that I'm trying to make here is the merit and virtue in what you have is what you have built as far as your foundation as a human being, your intellectual, rational, ideological, epistemological foundation. What's all in here? Your understanding of how you're supposed to be functioning in this world. Or most importantly, your justification of what you believe in, your justification of what you believe in. When you're cornered or when you're asked a very simple, basic question, you don't stutter or you don't, you know, start to sweat and you don't say, I don't know, I have to ask my father, I have to see what my priest says or what my sheikh says or whatnot. No, you're confident in your ability to be able to express your opinion by giving solid, sound arguments and answers that are substantiated, that are based on correct, accurate, factual information. And it's not just, you know, a cocktail of things that you've picked up from this lecture or that, because you've worked on yourself, because you've built something that is structured, well structured, strongly structured. And that's when you're able to say that, you know, Alhamdulillah, I'm Muslim by choice, that I have, you know, exposed myself to all these different scenarios, and this is where I am up to. So when it comes to these three concepts that we're going to be discussing today, the importance in all three of them is that they build something for us. They build a foundation for us on which we're going to be building the rest of our castle, our ideological, theological castle. And in any which way we look at them, we will realize and will understand that the benefit goes back to you. You are going to benefit. You're going to feel that, you know, change in the character, in your outlook in life, in your perception of ideas. And you're never going to be that shallow person. You won't be that, you know, superficial person who is gullible, is naive, follows their emotions, who doesn't have some kind of, you know, process in their understanding. And, or, of course, someone who doesn't just accept things based on no strong, solid evidence. And that's why I just wanted to share with you a interesting video of what a worldview is.
This is Sasha. This is Sam. When they first met, it was just small talk about where to find the best coffee, the new high top she just bought, a book of poetry he found at a used bookstore, a new local band she discovered just last weekend, a zombie apocalypse movie he saw last night with some friends from his martial arts class, her homemade screen print t-shirt, and his favorite Chinese restaurant, which made them both hungry. So they got 2 orders of Mandarin chicken with brown rice, and then Sam opened his fortune cookie. Life's journey ends with a new beginning.
Whoa, that's deep. But in the real world, life's journey ends with an ending. When you die, you're done.
Well, yes, your body no longer works, but your soul continues to exist, don't you think?
Your soul? No, I don't believe in ghosts. We're physical creatures, material objects, just a collection of highly organized atoms. When your brain flatlines, that's it. Game over.
So you don't believe in life after death?
No. I mean, it's a comforting thought, but there's just no scientific evidence for it. I'd rather face the real world than believe in a fairy tale.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sam. It's best to face reality, but it may be that life after death is reality. I mean, think about it. If life just ends at death, then everything we do or say comes to nothing. What meaning or purpose can our lives possibly have?
Well, I guess my life has whatever meaning I choose to give it. I personally believe in truth, beauty, science, making the world a better place, saving the environment, freedom of speech, and, tolerance.
Yes, that's all well and good. But what does all that matter if it ends in nothingness? What are your thoughts about God?
Which God? There are millions of gods.
The God that's in the Bible.
It's been proven that the Bible is just a bunch of mythology written by ancient desert nomads. But if faith in God makes you feel good, I won't argue with that. But I personally prefer more of a rational, open-minded approach to life. Here's what I believe, Sasha. You shouldn't think anything is true unless it's been scientifically proven.
But has that belief itself been scientifically proven? Sam, you and I look at life very differently.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's like we're from different worlds.
Not different worlds, different worldviews. A worldview is the set of lenses through which you see the world around you. It's a web of habit-forming beliefs that helps you make sense of all your experiences. Through your worldview, you interpret life in a particular way. It affects how you think, how you feel, and how you live from day to day. To understand what your worldview is, think carefully about the big questions of life. Does God exist? How did everything begin? Who am I? Why am I here? Am I living a good life? What happens after I die? Cabbages and puppies don't think about this stuff, but people do. Reflecting on these questions is part of what makes us human. In fact, every one of us has a worldview. What's yours?
Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that because when I watched it, I enjoyed it very much, and it gives us an understanding of, what this topic of worldview means. There are different interpretations that we have on what a worldview is. There's also different definitions given. But most importantly is that a worldview is the forming of general ideas or general convictions that give answers to universal questions. And all of that is based on a framework of how we see our lives to be. What basis do we look at things? And that's why in this definition here, I wrote, it's an outlook of how we see life. It's a framework on how we organize our lives, that of course is going to reflect and also benefit in our world, in our dunyawi world, here in this world that we live in, and also something that's going to contribute to the akhirah. Of course, that would be a religious worldview, because it's God-centered. You know, God is also involved in this person's worldview, what he or she has kind of like developed and adopted. As for Muslims, it's important for us to realize that there is a way of conceptualizing the purpose of this life, and also the purpose of the hereafter and where we're going to end up. And that's based on revelation, and that being the Holy Quran and also the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt alayhim salam. And now here, even when I'm saying the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt, so your Shi'i worldview would be different to a Sunni worldview, because a Sunni worldview would say that that I look at and feel life through the lenses of revelation, which is the Quran and Sunnah. But my understanding of Sunnah does not include the 12 Imams. The Shi'i worldview includes a larger cluster of the understand, or a larger number of personalities that would contribute to the definition of what Sunnah is. Here, the difference is that when it comes to understanding an Islamic worldview of any sort, it doesn't eliminate and it doesn't exempt non-Muslims, in the sense that there is a status, there is a role, there is a position for non-Muslims as well. And that's why in your worldview, as that guy had his worldview, was that, you know, beauty, science, nature, and freedom of speech and tolerance, you know, these are all really good things for a person to accept as a worldview. But then the really interesting criticism that his partner had was, well, what's the purpose of all of this if it's just going to go into your grave and there's not going to be any benefit after that? You know, which is a really good way of refuting a dunya or world or material based worldview. And that's why it's very interesting that you know, you wouldn't be able to come across this expression of worldview in our Islamic literature as a term, but our tradition is full of examples of where we are able to derive the importance of having a worldview. And that's what, you know, brings me to, you know, sharing this very important hadith that comes from, you know, Imam Ali, where Imam Ali says, here it is here, may the mercy of Allah, may the mercy of God be upon one who knows where they came from, what they are doing here, and where they will be. رحم الله امرئ عرف من أين في أين وإلى أين. And interestingly, when Imam Ali alayhi salam uses the word arifa, of course, he doesn't use the word alima. And I don't want to get into that, but it's also a very interesting epistemic discussion, the difference between ilm and ma'rifah. Ilm means knowledge. Ilm means knowledge. And ma'rifah means recognition. It means active knowledge. It means knowledge that is partnered with action. And that's why we would use the word recognition here. You know, the famous hadith from the Holy Prophet where he says, Man arifa nafsahu faqad arifa rabbah. One who knows or recognizes, ma'rifah here, one who recognizes their nafs, recognizes their Lord. And so, you know, these three simple fundamental questions pretty much sum up what a worldview is. Now, when we look at the worldviews and focusing on that video that we shared, when we look at the worldview, there are different types of worldviews. One worldview is saying that, hey, I've got nothing to do with none of this mumbo jumbo of angels in the sky and some celestial being that supposedly created us, and not going to believe in no scripture that talks about, you know, a man in the heavens and things like that. You know, show me evidence and I'll accept. You know, show me proof and I'll accept. You know, this is why here I wrote the term of the principiality of senses, that the asala, the originality, the fundamentality, the basis of everything that he or she believes in must be sensual, must be based on the hawas, the senses, perceives through your five sensual perceptions. Anything other than that, I'm sorry, I can't accept. If I'm not able to put it under a microscope, or if I can't see it in person, or if I can't at least see it in a museum, then I'm sorry, I won't be able to believe in it or accept it. And that's what empirical knowledge means. And that's what knowledge based on experiment means, you know, that it needs to go through lab tests. And unfortunately, this is a very interesting point here that we should mention. When the word science is used, it's very different in the Islamic tradition and the non-Islamic tradition. Because in the Islamic tradition, there was never a time where religion stood against science. It's rather the opposite. Our ulama, our religious scholars, were also scientists. If not all of them, then most of them. If not all of them, then most of them. Because a lot of them were polymaths, you know, and there are many examples that you are able to see throughout the history of Islam where the scholar was a jurist, was a theologian, was a philosopher, was a physicist, was a physician, was a architect, was this, was that, was this, was that. You know, yes, in the Christian world, there's always been that tension between science and religion, and that's why, in many cases, you know, science for Christianity, science did not dispense with religion, and that built up, you know, a lot of negative sentiment. And of course, those who were eager to learn knowledge and gain knowledge and have a realistic approach to life saw that, hey, why are you condemning science if science is what is contributing to the welfare of our lives? You know, why are you against science if it's something that, you know, is, you know, making our civilization so better? And that's why, you know, there's this emphasis of I believe in science. And, you know, in the Western mind, if someone says, I believe in science, then by default, you're going to say, oh, well, that means that they don't believe in religion. But in our Islamic understanding, that was never the case, because there was no clash between science and religion, if you follow what I'm saying. And so this is where this whole problem came about of how are you able to rely on your senses if your senses are making so many mistakes? You know, if you grab a cup and you put a pen in the cup, it's like as if you see that the pen is broken. Or when you do this, it's like as if the pen is wobbly, but the pen is solid and it's also straight and flat. So if your senses are making that many mistakes, and that's where you're getting your knowledge from, then how are you able to be confident in justifying the knowledge that you have? That's what epistemology does. And this is where a lot of problems came into existence. And that's why, you know, a lot of people who said that I believe in only in empirical science, and therefore I am going to reject anything to do with any other kind of knowledge. Materialism. Materialism is also a kind of similar to sensual perception, and that is that, you know, if it's material, if it's solid, if it's tangible, then yes, I'll believe in it and I'll accept it. Otherwise, no, unfortunately, I can't. And then, of course, you have those who have another kind of worldview, and their worldview is a moral worldview. And they say that, look, I'm not worried about this world or that world, or I'm not worried about this ritual or that ritual, and I'm against what they call institutionalized belief or institutionalized religion. You know, I have my own way of believing in things, and I, you know, express my own belief in God in the way I like. And for me, the most important thing is be good, be a nice person. You know, a wonderful example for this are those conservationists. I think, isn't that what they call it? Conservationist people who, you know, go to some wild area and have a start up a conservationist home for animals that are on the brink of extinction, for example. You know, am I saying the right word, or I'm kind of like doubting myself now?
Yeah.
No, I don't mean hippies. I mean, I don't mean hippies. I mean, you know, the conservationists, isn't that what they call it? You know, they start up a wildlife reserve to save the white rhino, for example, or something like that. Right? Someone can Google it if I've got it wrong. Just the other day, I was watching this program about a lady who dedicated her whole life to reintroducing chimpanzees back into the wild, you know, and this lady, if you see her, you know, you would say that, you know, she's a very, you know, caring, compassionate person. That's what I mean by here, by the worldview that motivates such an individual is morality. They do it for the sake of it being a good thing, right? And that's what their port of embarkment is in what it is that they do. This is a good thing, it's a good cause, and I do it, right? Then you have, of course, the rational kind of worldview. The rational worldview is that, you know, it needs to be based on intellectuality and things like that. Then there is the metaphysical worldview, and how things look are seen through the eyes of metaphysics, right? The next topic. I know there's more that can be said about worldview, and but you know it's 8:40 now, so we have to be a bit quick. Ideology. I'm sure you've all come across the word ideology, but where do you stand as far as ideology is concerned? You know, does ideology come before worldview? Does it come after worldview? Is ideology a product of worldview? Is it the effect of a worldview, or is a worldview the effect of an ideology? What about Islam? What does Islam have to say about ideology? Now, we understand that with the very word ideology, we're kind of looking at the human-centered understanding of ideas. So it's a set of beliefs that you have formulated in your mind about how you are relating and interpreting things that are around you. And therefore, it's a human-formed set of beliefs. And it does also formulate your, or make up your kind of like your identity as well. If that is the case, then do we have something called an Islamic ideology? And is an Islamic ideology equal to Islam as a religion? I would say that although ideology refers to a system of thought, but it's not a complete way of interpreting what religion has to offer for you. And the reason for that is that ideology is based on, it focuses on, is centralized around your understanding as a human being of how you see things around you, your interpretation of ideas and ideals, as we said, what to do and what not to do, the good and the bad. Whereas when it comes to religion, clearly there's something beyond that. And that's why we can say that, yes, there is something called ideology, but if we were to say Islamic ideology, then I would say that there's a broader meaning. The word ideology needs to have a broader meaning for us to say Islamic ideology and use it in an appropriate or correct way. Because it's not human-centered anymore. because a Muslim's ideology is not human formed, it's not human centered, but God centered. Because what you want to do in your ideology, in your understanding of your purpose of life, your purpose of life, is that you want to actively participate as a Muslim in your world that you live in, and also make sure that you centralize that active participation as a Muslim, you centralize it on the Quran and the Sunnah of Ahlul Bayt. Because ultimately your purpose is to get closer to God and also to make God happy. And that's why we can pose these very simple questions. And that's why I said, what's your take on ideology? You know, is it just simple as, okay, well, I have an Islamic ideology and that's it? Or is religion more than that? You know, what I'm saying is that Islam as a religion is above and beyond an ideology or a set of beliefs, because it's a way of life. It's introducing moral standards. It's instructing us on how we deal with society. It's telling us how we interact with nature. It's informing us about things that are going to be waiting for us in the hereafter, and so on and so forth. But here on the topic of, you know, gender, something that I was reading about today is that this whole notion of Islamic ideology being based from the get-go on giving privilege to the male and giving limitations to the female. And that's why I added these two questions here. Does Islam hold the ideology that males are leaders and protectors of females? And if is there a problem with that? If we were to say that, hey, you know, there's a problem with saying that males are leaders and protectors of females, you know, I don't like that kind of chivalry way of looking at men, or leadership and it being exclusively for men and things like that. That's what the question that I'm posing here. And that in Islamic ideology, embedded within the Islamic ideology, is this pretense acknowledgement that females are taught to, you know, subject themselves to being subordinate and confined to home, to their house and to masjid and to mosque and things like that. All right, I need to go a little bit quicker so we don't exceed the Sister Tahara. I also agree with you in what you said. So, I asked that question: is an ideology a product of worldview? So, does an ideology come as an effect of worldview, and worldview being the cause? Is there a difference between a worldview and ideology? I would say that something that we need to look into is that these two are not necessarily a product of the other, and not ideology being a cause of a worldview or adopting a worldview. Because when it comes to an ideology, even though an ideology needs a worldview, but you can have a worldview on its own and it wouldn't have the capacity or the ability to produce a specific, a comprehensive, a complete ideology. And that's why, although worldview is very important, it's extremely important, and each of one of us have a duty, have an incumbent duty to have their worldview set in place. But when it comes to what the worldview produces, even though it would produce, if a correct worldview, if it's a firmly established worldview, it would produce a good ideology, but it wouldn't give us that comprehensiveness that we need, because the only thing that is able to give us a comprehensive ideology is religion, because religion dominates ideology. So your worldview, which is rational, metaphysical, you say, yep, I believe that God exists, and you won't be able to say, oh, well, that leads me to praying 5 times a day in this particular way. No, that's where you need the Sharia. That's where you need religion. That's where you need the Quran. That's where you need the Sunnah. Epistemology, probably a new word for some of the sisters. Epistemology is made up of 2 words. One being episteme, which means ilm, which means knowledge, which means ma'rifah, and the other being the knowledge of. So logos or logia means the knowledge of, or the science of. So epistemology is basically the knowledge of knowledge, or the science of knowledge. It all comes down to how a person is able, for epistemology, how a person is able to justify their knowledge that they have adopted. If you have a theory in your mind, or if you have a belief in your mind, or if you see a certain proposition to be true, then what is that based on? What justification do you have? Where did you get that knowledge from? Is it sensual knowledge? Is it empirical knowledge? Is it knowledge through deduction or induction? Is it rational knowledge? Is it knowledge that came from wahi and revelation? Where did you get this knowledge from, and how are you able to justify it? You say that, okay, I believe that, God is the everlasting truth and God is one. Where did you get this knowledge from? What category of knowledge is this? Is it sensual knowledge? Is it empirical knowledge? Is it rational knowledge? And how are you able to justify that knowledge? This proposition, or of you, what you perceive in your mind, or what you have in your mind, doesn't necessarily need to be real or true. And when we're talking about truth, we're referring to that which corresponds to reality. Because if I was to ask you a certain question, and you would say, well, that's the truth, and I would ask someone else that exact same question, and they would say that is false, what do you have as a justification to what it is that you believe in to be true? And what do they have as a justification to what they believe as being false? This is what epistemology deals with, and this is why it's such an important topic, and that's why I wanted to bring it up here, because there are many important things that this is dependent on. Next week, inshallah, when we talk about theism and atheism and agnosticism, what is agnosticism? Agnosticism is a type of skepticism where a person, in their epistemological understanding of things, they doubt. They don't confirm, nor do they reject. An agnostic is someone says, well, I don't really know if what I believe is true, or if what I believe is false. I don't know. I could be right, I could be wrong, I don't know. There's no haqq, there's no absolute truth. Everything is relative. And so this pluralistic kind of understanding. And so, well, according to your view, you could be right, but according to my view, you could be wrong, you know. Or what makes you so confident that a Hindu and a Buddhist and a Jew and a Christian is wrong, if they believe that they're right? You know, what gives you that superiority in you thinking that, you know, you're always going to be right, and yet you always make mistakes, especially when we gave the example of your senses making mistakes and the wobbly pen. You know, epistemology is a very important topic. I know that I'm rushing, but I needed to mention this. And of course, you know, when we use certain words like theism, atheism, agnosticism, skepticism, important topics like or paradox, you know, someone says everything I say is true, or everything I say is a lie. When you said everything you say is a lie, is that sentence true or is it a lie itself? If it's true, then you just contradicted yourself. If that's a lie itself, then you also won't be able to, I won't be able to base my belief in your sentence, because that being a lie could mean that what it is that you're saying is true. Right? So this is what epistemology deals with, and we'll probably have to speak about this again next week when we talk about the topic of theism and atheism. But most importantly, in the last slides, these are the different types of knowledge that we are able to acquire. Except for the last one, all of them are acquisitional. Sensual knowledge, experimental knowledge, rational knowledge, intuitive knowledge, which is knowledge that's based on mystical experiences, for example, or things like that. The last one is revealed knowledge, which is wahi, which is revelation. And that's why I said we don't have access to that. Only the prophets, peace be upon them, have access to that.